Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to be talking about traditional platforms versus integration platform as a service. So, last time we talked a little bit more about how traditional integration platforms work, what are the key capabilities and components. This time, we're going to actually compare traditional platforms versus integration platforms, which are kind of a move to the cloud, and how the architectures vary and what kind of benefits you get, and as well as certain kind of caveats and nuances you have to be careful about. So about me, my name is Ali Rizwan from SEA Consulting. I got 20 years of background doing this stuff, building enterprise and data integration solutions. Got experience in the healthcare domain, government, financial, and specifically got my bread and butter is the Epic domain. And really, our services focus on data analytics services, integration services, and staff augmentation within those areas. So, agenda for today. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about challenges in traditional integration platforms, um, how iPaaS helps, iPaaS integration platform as a service helps, and the caveats. So, what are the key challenges? Mainly, it's the flexibility. You got low demand, you got uh, too much demand, right? Like, how do you balance that? How do you balance your workloads between these two situations, right? So, if you talk about integration platform as a service, some of the challenges that you have in your traditional systems, right? As we mentioned, all the hardware and software that you have, somebody has to install those, right? If you're talking about moving to the cloud, most of those applications are browser based, so you have a very low footprint software or software and hardware footprint to like maintain. Management of upgrades, fixes of all the products, resources you have to maintain in terms of personnel to kind of keep the lights running of that hardware and the infrastructure that you carry and the software that you carry, is certainly a big drag on your resources. Maintaining a primary and secondary systems for high availability, disaster recovery. These are things you're doing yourself. When you have a traditional integration platform. If you're got pretty much a lot of high capital expense to get a system up and running, that takes time to do in a traditional integration platform. Um, as we talk about moving into the cloud, a lot of those costs go away, right? But with that, certain things come into play, right? There's certain caveats that come into play. Um, Even though a lot of the costs go away, like we mentioned, the hardware, software, uh, cooling, for your data centers might reduce the cost for offsite data, the disaster recovery. Certain costs do increase that you have to be, um, uh, such as computing and storage. Basically, those were kind of fixed cost you has. Those move into being more ongoing costs. Certain things I highlighted about labor and migration. As you're moving to the cloud, you're going to have costs that you would not otherwise necessarily have if you are on-prem, right? So if you've got a migration you're doing from like one set of hardware to another, it's probably more lightweight versus moving everything to the cloud because you typically involves a redesign, what type of workloads you have going on-prem, how they're going to work on the cloud. That is certainly a little bit more of an expense up front that you have to kind of invest in. However, when you go into the ongoing expense side, typically, your compute, once you put your kind of, server hardware down, that's the compute you're working with. There's not something you have to worry about. With compute in an ongoing sense, because it's pay as you go pricing, right? Like typically with cloud services, you are paying for things as you go, as you consume based on your consumption models. So that different pricing model, those are different um, type of costs you're going to incur in that model. Certainly, change management and training. I'll expand a little bit more into this concept, what we mean as you move into the cloud, how change management and training plays a role, and lastly, on the ongoing side, the development and deployment, right? If you have development and deployment on-prem, typically that ends up being a little bit more on-prem versus iPaaS in our experience because the tooling that you have, especially the new tooling when it comes to kind of migrating stuff, CI/CD from dev to test to prod, and the kind of the quality control that you have to kind of move your basically your development across environments, it's a lot more smoother. So I would say that from an iPaaS, that's certainly kind of another kind of plus you get there. However, with kind of the responsibility that you have with that flexibility, there's certain caveats that come into play, because how you design your system changes. A very kind of pertinent example of that is if you think about a rogue query, right? Anybody who's done any development, if you have any rogue transactions that you design, a bad design in an on-prem system, all it really does is lead to like a delay to complete your task. It doesn't really increase any cost because the servers and the infrastructure you have, that's all you're working with. However, in the cloud, because it's a pay-as-you-go pricing model, if you have a bad transaction, that can lead to a lot more cost. And you're not only are you waiting for the delay to complete your transaction, you're also paying for additional costs. Now, so as we go into the cloud and how the cloud is going to function, basically a lot of the thought process when you come to move to the cloud, you're really talking about workload to workload, right? So typically, when you are trying to move to the cloud, as we mentioned, there's going to be cost savings when you move certain applications from your data center into the cloud. Certainly, your cooling's going to decrease. You're going to shift the focus of that staff that's kind of doing the upgrades and managing that infrastructure. They're going to have a lot less to do, like we mentioned, with disaster recovery, high availability, all that tooling and all that kind of process you're maintaining, all that effort that's going into maintaining that high availability disaster recovery, that is going to reduce from a personnel standpoint. However, pretty much in most enterprises, not all applications move to the cloud. So you're always going to have some mission critical software and applications that are going to stay on-prem. An example of kind of key financial data and metrics that you have about your organization. Most organizations are going to be kind of keen to kind of move that to the cloud. So even though we talk about reduction in cost when it comes to your infrastructure that you maintain, there's still always going to be some infrastructure that you have. So when we talk about moving your costs and reducing some costs for an iPaaS going to the cloud, it's just for the cost associated with that. Certainly there are cost savings, but it's not, you don't get rid of your data centers, if you know what I mean, right? So and also when you are trying to move your resources to the cloud, you're talking about really comparing. If you're trying to compare, hey, how much does it cost me to run my services, and the workloads I maintain in the cloud, on-prem versus if I move to the cloud, right? Like typically that's what you think when you're moving. Hey, how much cost savings am I going to have? That you can really, have to really kind of peel the onion a little bit, because not all workloads are the same. Naturally, there's going to be differences, right? So when you're comparing your on-prem solutions versus your cloud solution, you have to really keep in mind that by default, as you move to the cloud, you're going to redesign certain things. So by your kind of comparisons, are not always apple to apple. So with that, we're going to continue the series. We're going to continue talking about more deeper into iPaaS solutions going forward. Hope you guys enjoy this series, and we'll have a link to the first part in this as well, so you can kind of refer back to the original talk about traditional platforms and how the moving to the cloud can be leveraged with these caveats kept in mind. So thank you.